Humdrummity, humdrummity, humdrummity.
Hi there, listener. School is in. Today's guest is a lifelong teacher, from childhood play to high school and university tutoring to a professional career as a personal mentor and coach for individuals, business owners, to corporate groups and those in the C-suite. She will instruct us on why work doesn't have to be hard and how leadership and co-worker interactions should always remain playful. Tune in to find out whether I pass the test on the 6 basic human needs. All right, class is in session. Oh, hey, Annette. Thanks for taking time to join us on Humdrummity. How's your day going so far?
So far, so good. Thanks for having me here today.
It's great to finally get a chance to reach out and speak with you. So, as we always do here on Humdrummity, I would like you to start by stating your full given name.
Okay, my full given name is Annette Michelle Dykes.
Right, but you no longer go by that name. What is your new name or your now married name that you go by?
My name now is Annette Michelle Sharpe.
Have you found that there has been a change for you, particularly to people you may never have met that now know you as Annette Sharpe?
I think so. I really do think so. I mean, I was 28 when I changed my name. So up until that point, there wasn't a lot of experience that I had in needing to present myself in a more, let's say, powerful kind of a way. But I think that the name Annette Michelle Sharpe has a ring to it. You know, that I definitely get comments about that, and it's easy to play on the word sharp. So yeah, I do think there's been a difference for sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you felt it was a bit of was it an upgrade for you?
I think in a way it was, but for me, the reason why I decided to change my name was I think more of a traditionalist perspective of wanting our family to all share a name.
Mm.
So when I got married, we already had a daughter and we named her with Andrew's last name, Sharpe. So me having that last name was important to me so that I would share the same last name as our family, as our
Yeah,
kids.
myself and Mrs. Humdrummity did the same thing. But I don't think, that there's any problem with people if they want to go with a hyphenated name, keep their maiden name. I mean, again, it's all about, the power of your name. And you may
So
not,
true.
you may identify very much with the given name that you had, and you don't necessarily want that to change.
I think that happens a lot, especially as people, in my experience, as my friends who got married later tended to often keep their names.
Hmm.
Not necessarily true for everyone, but you start to identify with a name, right? As you go through and you build a reputation for yourself, you build a professional reputation for yourself. And if you're really attached to the name, I think it makes a lot of sense to keep it, right? In
Yeah,
some way, whether
right.
you hyphenate it or what.
And it's a sharp name for
It's
sure.
a sharp, see, that's what people do.
Right?
It's a
Yeah,
sharp name.
it's a sharp name. So it has served you well.
It
That's
has, I
terrific.
think so. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get to the main reason why I invited you on Humdrummity. If you could tell the listeners what your current title and what you do for work.
I'm the founder and senior coach at Growing for Success. I've had my company, I became a coach in 2003, and I recently started working with an incredible company called Focal Point Coaching as their leader of ongoing coach success. So I'm bringing my years of experience as a coach to a really cool organization, and I'm really loving working with this new team. It's really great.
Right. So you are helping, I mean, you have your own consulting company where
Yeah.
you work one-on-one with clients, but you're also working with this other company to help them expand their reach, their brand.
Yeah, so I have over the last 7 years, Graham, I have worked behind the scenes in different actually in my entire career, worked behind the scenes in different personal development organizations, really understanding this whole personal development world. So I would say that that's the thing that I know best, where I've really hung my hat in understanding how people work together. And I've been with the company for 3 months. And so it's a brand new engagement for me. But my role is to make sure that our coaches, there are over 250 coaches worldwide right now, that our
Wow.
coaches have the resources that they need, the support that they need, and that our team is moving strategically towards the expansion of this company, which is super exciting. We're blasting their goals out of the water, let's say. The company is really doing incredible things to bring business coaching to the world, and we're expanding globally right now in big ways. So it's exciting to be
Wow.
a part of it at this stage,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Well, that sounds like it's pretty fulfilling for you. Um,
super fulfilling. Yeah.
and that sort of, I do want to get more into the details of your work as we go through the interview. But why I wanted to have you on the podcast is when I started the podcast, it was really in my thinking, it was more about all the things that surround work, what we do in our personal life, how, obviously work is one of the biggest parts of our lives and we spend much of our time doing it. But it's more about the idea of the monotony surrounding it. We get up in the morning, we do our thing, we commute to work, we do our work, we come home, we may do something after dinner, and then we, sit down and watch Netflix and go to bed and repeat, rinse and repeat.
Right.
But having you on here to discuss work and how people can make that either less monotonous um, and more enjoyable, because as I said, that's a huge component of our life.
Yes.
And one of the things when I was reading up on your bio, and very impressive, had quite a career. Um, but one of the things you say is, work doesn't have to be hard,
Right.
right? So could
Right.
you expand on that? Why, what can we do so work isn't necessarily hard?
Mm. Wow. So many people feel that, don't they? That work
Hmm.
is hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
It actually makes me think about when you ask what can you do, it's different for every person. It's different with how a person prioritizes what is important to them. But getting out of a routine that is keeping a person stuck, switching things up a little bit is really important. Let's talk about the six basic human needs. Are you familiar with them, Graham?
Mhm.
The six
Yeah.
basic human needs? What are they?
I couldn't name them for you, but I'm
Okay.
pretty sure I'm only pretty good at four of them.
Okay. Well, let's talk about them because most people know what the six basic human needs are, right? But understanding how and where you prioritize these needs in your life will probably determine how satisfied you are or how monotonous you feel your life
Hmm.
is if certain things are missing. So, the six basic human needs, and so many people talk about this, none of this is new, but I just want to bring it to the table. I think it'll be helpful.
Yeah.
Are certainty. We need certainty in our life. Every single person needs certainty. You need to know that you have a roof over your head and that
Hmm.
you have food on the table, that the paycheck's coming in. You don't want to go into work like, am I going to have a job tomorrow or not? Like, is
Hmm.
it going to still be there? I might not like it, but is it still going to be there in the morning or not? Right. So we need certainty in our life. That is a given and it's a basic need. But we also need uncertainty. We
Hmm.
need we need variety. We need things to be different. We need to experience life in new ways. We need to create new adventures and new opportunities for ourselves. We need to have that little thing that comes in sideways to knock us over a little bit,
Hmm.
to go, oh, shake things up a little. Then it doesn't become that wake up, go to work the same way, do the same thing every day, come home, watch Netflix, and go to bed.
Hmm.
If that is your life, you certainly have certainty, but you don't have you're missing the uncertainty that we all need. So
Yes.
how can we create that? And I heard you talk about that with some of your other guests.
Hmm.
Order a different coffee.
Yeah.
Go do mix, shake it up, take a different route to work. But maybe it's a little bit more than that.
Mhm.
Maybe there's something like you started a podcast. It's a little uncertain,
It
right?
sure is.
How do you got to navigate this thing? You got to figure out how are you going to promote it? How are you going to get people to come? What guests are you going to have? What if someone cancels on you at the last minute? Uncertainty shakes
Hmm.
things up a little. We all need that. So those are just the first two basic human needs.
Right.
The third one is significance. We need to feel like we are different. We're important in some way. We have a bit of an edge. We are standing out in our own way. I'm not talking about ego. I'm
Mhm.
just talking about we need to know that we matter, right? And if we don't feel like we do, we're getting up every day, going to the office, no, 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 humdrummity, humdrummity,
I'm done
humdrummity. If that is our experience, then we're not going to feel significant in our life. What do you think we're going to do? We'll shake it up in a way that makes it in makes our life interesting, even if it has a negative ripple effect down the road,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow.
right?
I think we could unpack. I mean, we've already gone through three, and we
Yeah,
already got like, each one of these could be an episode on the podcast, just in
completely.
discussing it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to discuss in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And some people take it too far. I mean, we know the egomaniacs out there who take it to that next level, right? They're big, they're making a difference out there in the world, and everything is
Right.
about significance.
Mm-hmm.
But it's feeding a basic human need. We all need it. It's not right, it's not wrong. It's how are you playing that out in your life?
Yeah.
So we can all ask ourselves, and listeners can ask themselves, how do you feel significant in your life?
I think that's a really important point, because I feel that a lot of people don't see their lives as either significant or interesting. And I can speak to this because I've been asking people to come on this podcast, and so many people will say, "Oh, I'm not interesting. I have nothing to say." And I'm like, "Well, I know your story. I find it actually quite interesting. Maybe it's time for you to reflect upon it, right? You don't have to have this massive ego that you are projecting out to everybody. Look at me, listen to me, to
Exactly.
be interesting, to have something to contribute to for other people, to gain knowledge, to improve themselves."
100%. And so it's such an important thing that you just said, because significance is important to every single person,
Mm.
and every person is significant.
Yes.
So if people can walk away from this just hearing that every person has significance, you have significance, I do
Mhm.
too. We're important in what we bring to the world, no matter how big or small it is. There's a ripple effect that we create in our lives. And so how
Mhm.
do we want to show up in that? How do we
Yeah.
want to show up in our own significance, right? And it's a basic human need. We need it. We don't feel like we have it. We can get into that will not need later.
Yeah. 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 Well, this is great. Maybe you should be
Shall we
hosting
continue?
Humdrummity.
Thank you. No, this is yours. This is your shtick. Your significance with this. And I want to actually get into one of the other six basic needs where I think
Hmm.
this particular project is really feeding an important need that we
Hmm.
all have. But we'll get there. It's the last one.
Okay.
Okay. So, do you want to take a wild guess what another basic human need is?
Oh, I feel like I'm getting graded, and I didn't study for the exam.
Okay.
I think I
No
have
problem.
dreams like this where I'm in
Yeah.
chemistry and I'm having flashbacks to grade 12
Okay.
chemistry,
Okay.
and I didn't study.
I will spare you then. I will spare you that. Okay, the fourth basic human need, love and connection,
Hmm.
right? Some might argue it's the most important need, but it depends. How you prioritize these needs is different for each person. So as you listen to these different needs, you might say to me, oh, that's the most important need to me. Someone might say, certainty is the most important need to me. I don't need all the rest. Yes, you do. You need all of these six basic human needs. But
Yeah.
how we prioritize them is different for each person. So that's the cool thing. We have different people, different personalities out there. But love and connection and belonging, and there's many, many, many studies about this, is one of the most important things. Children who do not have love and connection
Hmm.
when they're infants do not thrive.
Hmm.
Many do not make it, right? So we need love and connection. It's fundamental to our growth as human beings. So if you, we're talking about work, are going to work, you might wave to someone in the hall, sit in a cubicle all day. You answer the phone and do the same thing every day. Is there love and connection happening at work? Where do
Hmm.
you get that need
Hmm.
fulfilled? And maybe you don't get it fulfilled at work, but you need it somewhere else, right?
Hmm.
So, how are you getting that need for love and connection met?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's a really important thing for people to consider.
Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up because since I've started this podcast, my daily interactions with people have completely changed because now I look at every individual as somebody, what's their story? What can they tell? And this has gone into my work because, as we all do on a day-to-day basis in the modern era, we're on, a Zoom or a Teams call with a colleague, and it's like I'm interviewing them and I'm trying to get information. Like I found out this young woman I work with. She's just, she's a small, diminutive blonde, really great. well, and I found out she's into drumming. I'm like, oh wow, that's really interesting. What kind of drumming do you do? Oh, thrash and speed metal. And I'm just like, what?
I love
Like,
that.
I would never ever have guessed that in a million years. But had I not tried to make that connection,
You're making my point. This is the
mhm,
point. Is every single, it's so beautiful. Every person out there has a story. And how can we connect with one another? We
mhm,
just did a team building exercise, and anybody listening who has a team and wants to practice, do this team exercise, do it. It was amazing. We broke out into groups of two in our team, and we had 7 minutes to come up with as many things in common that we had
mm,
with the other person who we were partnered with. We were supposed to pick the person on the team who we knew the least.
yeah,
By the end of it, well, what do you think's happening? We're laughing. We're
mhm.
joking around. I didn't know that about you. No way, right? Everybody is feeling what? Connected,
Connection. Yeah,
connection with one another. So, knowing and understanding a person, what's important to them, what is their story? How can I get to know you? What do you need to know about me? How are we the same? How are we connected?
hmm,
Really helps us to feel like we're a part of something bigger. Super important. So, I love
yeah.
that, pulling that into your team. I love that you're doing that now with your
Yeah,
colleagues.
it's totally changed, sort of my outlook on, like, I'm talking to people in elevators, maybe annoying them by talking to them, but I usually try and make something witty,
But
and it's enjoyable. Yeah, maybe it's
lovely.
not, right?
Yeah.
It maybe breaks their
Yeah.
monotony, makes their life a little less boring, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why do we sit on our phones
Hmm.
everywhere we go?
Don't get me started about. I want to do a podcast about phone zombies. People
Oh my
that just
gosh.
walk through their daily life looking at their phone, and it slows them down, and they get in there. But literally, they look like zombies. They're just going through their life. They're going through a lineup. It's just like, okay, look around you. There's got to be something more present, more interesting in what you're experiencing in that moment than whatever, the
Yeah.
TikTok or, Insta you're looking at right there.
Yes. 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 Do you know why we look like zombies?
Why?
Because we're zombies.
Well, that was so obvious. I should have guessed it. I hope that's not on the final exam. Well, I hope it is because I'll get it right this time.
You will get it
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so it's a really it's actually a really beautiful thing to be noticing and recognizing. And as we start walking through life with different perspective, this is a different conversation. We'll get back to the 6 human needs in a minute, but
Hmm.
the more we can recognize the subtle things and appreciate the subtle things in life, my experiences, the more peaceful we are on the inside, the more gratitude we have for the beauty in the world. And there's so much of it. And the
Hmm.
more connected we feel to other people because we see the beauty in them. Okay, fourth
No, we're on to
basic
five
human
now. We're on to
five.
five.
Oh,
I've
right,
been
sorry.
writing them down.
Fifth basic human need, growth.
Hmm.
And actually, before I go into um, growth, I want to just say that the first four needs, my understanding of it, anyways, that the first four needs are really more about, let's call it our humanness. We all have a humanness and then we have a beingness within us, right?
Hmm.
Our humanness, our personality. So the first four are needs of our personality. There are needs of being human. These other two are the needs that are going to help us to really thrive and to really feel more energized and on purpose in our lives. These last two. Okay. So one
Hmm.
of them is growth.
Hmm.
How are you growing? What are you doing to expand your awareness?
Hmm.
If you have the same routine every single day, what can you throw in there to learn instead of watching the regular Netflix? I'm watching a really great show, by the way, right now. But if there is a regular Netflix show that you're watching, why not throw in a documentary on something that
Hmm.
is interesting to you so that you can learn something new? Or practice the self-awareness like you're practicing right now with the experiences with your team, noticing the subtleties of people's behavior, asking them interesting questions, growing and changing your perspective and changing your mind.
Hmm.
These are all opportunities for growth for us. Try something new. And I would venture to say that this podcast has probably provided a lot of growth for you. Would you
Yes.
say so?
And I hope it's providing growth for other people.
Right, right.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
that two of my guests have mentioned that before about growth, and they're both of them essentially took it down to make yourself uncomfortable. do something that may slightly make you feel uncomfortable, because I think that's why we do fall into routine and monotony, is because, oh, this is comfortable, this is perhaps easy for me. And
Right.
that growth is something that requires a effort and may make you feel a little uncomfortable, like talking to somebody that you work with just on a regular, online call, asking them something, about themselves.
Yeah, 1000%. And what's beautiful about that, if you're getting out of your comfort zone, as you said, you're actually touching on at least a minimum of two of these human needs, basic
Mm,
human needs. One being growth and the other one being uncertainty. You're
mhm,
stretching yourself into a place you've never been before. So now you're actually fulfilling on more than one of these basic human needs, which is great. What if somebody who really, let's just go back to the dating days, which is like way decades ago for me. But, go back to the dating days and somebody's interested in somebody else, right?
mhm.
Okay. There's growth in working up the courage to talk to somebody, to ask them about themselves. There's the potential, there's uncertainty. You don't know where that's going to go, right?
Yeah.
There's potential for connection or maybe even love. Like every time we step outside of our comfort zone and expand ourselves, we have the opportunity to hit on more than one of these basic human needs. So it's
Mhm.
so
They're
important to take
all
that next step.
interconnected for sure.
So
Yeah.
interconnected. Okay, so the last human need that I wanted to touch on, Graham, is the one that I'm imagining is really playing out here in this project for you. And you even mentioned it when I said growth. You said, yeah, and hopefully other people will grow too. And so the last basic human need is the need to contribute.
Mm,
We need to know that what we're doing is of benefit to somebody else, that we're making a difference somewhere.
Well, it's like providing value. You need to feel that what you do, what you contribute, has some value to other people. And I
Yeah.
think, again, this goes back to this point I was bringing about when I talk to people that, hey, come on my podcast. They don't necessarily value themselves,
Mm.
perhaps, and that if they took that time to reflect, that they would see value in themselves. I think everybody has value.
Totally. And so if you're talking to people and they don't feel good about themselves or they don't feel like what they have to offer is of significance or of importance, just send them to me. I'll help them
Okay. We'll put up the link in the podcast description, which I will,
out.
linking to your site and make mention in the outro.
I'm being playful, but the most important thing to take away from all of that is that everybody does have something to give and something of
Hmm.
value to bring to the table. We all need all of these six human needs met. And if any of them are missing for us, especially if they're a top priority for us, we're going to fall into feelings of maybe anxiety or depression or just
Hmm.
simple boredom, right?
Yeah.
It's like one of the one way to think about with certainty and uncertainty, some people are like, well, I don't want certainty and uncertainty because then I'm going up and down and up and down and up and down. And that, that's scary maybe
Hmm.
for some people. But what's the alternative?
Mm.
A
Yeah.
straight line.
Flatline. You're flatlining literally.
And then what's that? Death.
Well, yeah, well, that is death. Yes. I was going to correct
Yeah.
myself because I didn't want people to feel too bad about themselves.
But it's a perspective. It's a perspective. Don't feel bad
Hmm.
about yourself. Anybody who's caught in that flat line or caught in that monotony,
Hmm.
the good news is there are things that you can do immediately to take change. And the first thing you need to change is your mindset. Because when you think about something differently and you see that it's possible or you believe that something is possible for yourself, then you can take that action that will lead to significant change. And they stay comfortable way too long. And so they stay in these routines and just get stuck. So
And then it gets harder to get out of them, right?
it's way
It's
harder to get out of them.
Yeah, it's like any habit, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Now, one thing I wanted to just touch on that you mentioned, which I think, and particularly for me in life, is this idea of playfulness.
right.
Because I think people get, and as we get older, oh, life needs to be somewhat serious, and even work needs to be serious. When I'm at work, I always try, and be playful about it, right?
Good. Yeah.
And inject some humor into what could be a serious topic or something that is important to the business, but at the end of the day, is it really, is it life threatening? Is it going to, have such an effect on people that it'll be a devastating thing? No, it is important in the moment, but in the grand scheme of things, hey, let's take a little bit of humor and look at it, right? Let's have humor about ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just explore that. Let's dig into that a little bit.
Mm.
So, how do you bring humor into your day to day?
Well, if we're in a meeting, I will somebody speaking in the comments, they'll say something, I'll just throw a little comment in there, get
Awesome.
a few laugh emojis,
Yeah.
but I do, we were doing an end of the year review, and the person that was presenting was going to present about what my department was doing. And I basically said in the chat, please don't fall asleep during this part, right? Even though
Great.
we had achieved quite a lot in this year. But I just wanted to, yeah, and maybe people paid more attention because of that. I'm not sure,
I
right?
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really smart. I was watching a presentation a couple of days ago, and one of our team members went through this whole presentation, then put a quote up on
Mm.
up on the board. But it was her quote. She put her name at the bottom and she said, and here's a really important quote. And it's a quote by me. And the
Yeah.
whole room just laughed, right? Because it was so unexpected
Mhm.
and really just precious and brought that lightness to the room. So I think
Mhm.
you're absolutely right to bring that playfulness is so important. It breaks the monotony. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling a little humdrum,
Mhm.
a little monotonous,
Mhm.
how can you bring that joy of your playfulness, of that
Mhm.
childlike energy back into your life? What could you do today that would
Mhm.
be a little bit different? That would be a little bit silly. Maybe you put the music on and dance in your living room. Maybe you um, run down the road and start smelling some of the flowers, if there are still flowers where you are,
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
not dead of winter. Throw
Drop
a
and make a
snow
snow
ball.
angel. Drop and make a snow angel, right?
That's
And,
right.
and
Yeah.
this is one of the themes that I've tried to convey through the podcast is, and almost what led me, it was actually upon reflection after I started the podcast. But go back and think about the things that you enjoyed as a child, like when you were younger. What are those things? Because those are probably the things that you, A, forgotten about, but B, brought you the most joy. And many of us, as we go into our professional career, may have thought, and for other reasons, because they weren't, you couldn't make a career out of what you thought was these playful things, go down the road because they need to, well, of course, they need certainty. So they are going to get a job that pays them money, but it may not be their passion. And
Right.
I'm not saying go out and quit your job and start your passion, but
Right.
bring that back into your personal life outside of work.
May I share a story with you about
You
somebody I
certainly
worked
can.
with?
We love stories on Humdrum.
Yeah, because I really love this conversation about bringing back some of the things that really energized you and filled you up, and the things that make you come alive. It's
Mm.
important to reflect on those things. It's important to
Mhm.
take a stop and go, you know, what are the things that energize me in my life? Where am I getting feedback from others that I'm really good at something and maybe I take it for granted?
Mhm.
Maybe it just comes so natural to me that I don't even know. But I want to share a story with you of a man I worked with several years ago. We did the Sacred Gifts program together. I took him through. He discovered what his gifts were. He is emergency room doctor. Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
trained physician, emergency room. Busy, crazy. It's
Stressful, very
triage,
stressful. Yeah.
super stressful. Okay. And he was not unhappy in his work, but had not been able to pursue or had not taken the time to even reflect on what were the things, like you were saying, that really energized him. What were the things that he loved to do when he was a child? And so part of this process of really figuring out your gifts, you can call them superpowers, you can call them genius zone, you can call them anything you want. It doesn't matter to me, but the things that we're naturally good at
Hmm.
that make us come alive. And we did this work together. And one of his gifts was the gift of music.
Hmm.
He was a phenomenal musician and
Hmm.
had performed throughout his young life. And as he got older, he got into his career and he got into his routine and he got into all of the busyness that created for him. And
Hmm.
he had put down the instruments, he had stopped playing music.
Right.
And so the action step was practice for an hour a week.
Hmm.
Just practice for an hour a week. Pick up the instrument and play for 1 hour a week. And he
Hmm.
started doing that. Fast forward a few years later, and he's composing music. He
Wow.
has had one, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll double check with him, but he's had one of his pieces taken up by a movie deal
Oh,
to
wow.
have his composed music
Hmm.
on the big screen. I mean, that is incredible. All while continuing with his career, with his
Hmm.
profession. But it was reprioritizing the things that made him come alive. He's happy. He's thriving. He's created an online course now about how to speak to physicians. So he's built
Hmm.
new things. It's the ripple effect of the energy of finding the thing that makes you come alive,
Hmm.
that switches things up, and his whole life is different 5 years later. Would never, right? Like sometimes you look at your life and you go, where will I be in 5 years? I don't know. I have
Hmm.
no idea. 5 years ago, I didn't know I'd be here. But
Yeah.
if you don't make a change, if you're not willing to step out of your comfort zone, you'll probably be in the same place 5 years from now than you are today till you start looking, understanding yourself, taking some new chances, risk,
Hmm.
choices
Getting out of your comfort zone,
out of
making
your
yourself
comfort zone.
uncomfortable. Yeah. Well, it really sounds like this guy could be the poster boy for humdrumedy, because that is exactly what I'm talking about. And
Yeah,
it's this idea that it's never too late. And you don't have to quit your job or change your profession to still find joys in life. You don't have
right.
to make these, monumental shifts. Like you say, start playing for an hour,
Yeah.
practice your, go back and play your music for an hour, right? And then it just takes that, because an hour a week that's nothing. That's nothing
It's
out of
one
your life.
Netflix show less than you're
Yeah.
watching right now, right?
There has been so many Netflix references on this podcast. Netflix, if you are listening, please support the podcast and maybe we can work on a deal together. Now, I just want to go back because you mentioned this term before. And when I first heard it, and one of the things I've really tried with humdrumedy is to keep the thematic content practical.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make this a new age type show. Not that there's anything wrong with new age. If you want to go do your drum circles and hang your dream catchers, power to you. But that's not what I wanted this podcast to be about. And you mentioned the sacred gifts. And when I first heard that term, I was like, New Ageism. But then I delved into it and got to understand it more. And it is a very interesting concept that is behind it. And that everyone does have, call them what you will, sacred gifts. We have innate abilities
Yeah.
that we sometimes forget we have and may not use them in our daily life. And again, if you could go and review what your sacred gifts are, that is a way to break out of your humdrum, right? Out of your doldrums.
1,000%. 1,000%. I mean, knowing what your gifts are is just the first step. Okay, so I have these gifts. Well, what am I going to do with them, right? But the first place to start, if people are feeling this monotony, stuckness, like I'm just in my life and it's not going where I want it to go back, like you said, to who were you before life took over?
Hmm.
How did you show up? Think back to the playground. What games were you playing? I was playing imagination games, or I was playing school and I was always the teacher.
Right.
Okay. So it was drama, it was imagination, it was creating storytelling, um, it was turning things that were inanimate into things that were alive. Like I
Hmm.
created I was creative in that way, right? And teaching, I loved to share and teach things to people along the way. And it's played out in my life
Hmm.
in different ways. It's
Hmm.
another one of the gifts, by the way. So when you look back at how you played on the playground, what did you do? How did you show up naturally? What energized you? What actions did you take that led to teachers, parents, friends, anyone else saying, you are so good at that.
Mm-hmm.
I have I haven't seen somebody who can do that the way that you can.
Mm-hmm.
Keep doing that, right? But we put those things on the shelf and we get into what we need to do.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful exploration to start looking for those clues.
And that again goes back to this reoccurring theme that comes up is about reflection, about personal reflection. And I think one thing I would hope people would take away from listening to this podcast is to sit quietly and perhaps just do a reflection upon yourself.
Beautiful. Yeah. And as you do, here's the things that I would recommend people reflect on.
Mm.
Okay. Don't reflect on where you screwed up.
Hmm.
Don't reflect on the mistakes that you made. I mean, okay, different exercise. Do that outside of this exercise. If you're looking at moving forward, that is a reflection exercise. Maybe there's forgiveness needed. Maybe there's trauma that needs to be healed. There's probably work that needs to be done. But let's put that over here for a moment. The exercise is to look towards what energizes us. What feedback were we given, as I mentioned before? Where do we get extraordinary results in our lives? Like, where do we do things that other people go, I have no idea how you do that. How do you do that? I can't do that. Right. And the repeated patterns. So, patterns that play out, like the teacher thing that I said. So, I played school when I was little, like 5, 6, 7. As soon as I knew what a teacher was and playing school, I've got my
Hmm.
chalkboard. Right. Then in high school, I was asked to mentor and even teach one of my math classes because they couldn't get a substitute teacher. So
Oh,
I
wow.
taught, yeah, I learned the material the night before. I taught it to my peers. Then in university, teaching people, because I did a degree in kinesiology, teaching people how to take care of their health and their wellness, then teaching people as a coach and then as a leader and then in the C-suite, right? Like moving along, there's always been coaching, mentoring, teaching. It's the repeated pattern in my life. Everybody has that up to a certain point until we numb ourselves and
Right.
flatline, right? So go back to when you felt alive.
Yeah.
Go back to when you were playing at your best.
That would be a great exercise for everyone to partake in, I think. Now, I'd like to move on because I'd like to talk about your current professional life.
Okay.
And one of the things you just mentioned is working with the C-suite. So you do mentorship for business owners, but at the same time, is this advice applicable to just everybody, anybody working an everyday job? Or
Oh,
is
absolutely.
this, it is, yes.
Yeah,
Do you
absolutely.
want to get into some more of that, of what services you provide?
Yeah, sure. So, as a business coach and executive coach, I work with people one on one to help them build their businesses, but more importantly to me, to build and create thriving teams. I'm a people person. I love people and I love
Mhm.
knowing how people work together and how they interact together. And so, my roles to this point in the C-suite, I've held operational roles, COO roles in personal development organizations to help them build their businesses, scale their businesses, grow their businesses, and grow their teams.
Mhm.
Along the way, I've learned some things that work and don't work when you're dealing with people, because people are the X factor, right?
Yes.
And so many executives and business owners find themselves in a place at some point where they're saying, I know what I want. Maybe I don't, but let's pretend you do. I know what I want. I know where I want to go. I have some really great people on my team. We can't get it together to scale. We're plateaued, or we're moving so fast that we don't have the space and time and opportunity to strategically plan where we're going to go. And so I usually come in as that third party
Mhm.
objective perspective to
Right.
help the teams to realign, to get back in touch with that vision, to get that clarity, to go where they need to go to take that step towards what it is that they want to achieve together. So a coach is on the outside of the team, moving people along the way,
Mhm.
where when I was in the team, I used my coaching skills to galvanize and bring people together towards a goal. So I've never not used my coaching, whether I'm in a team or I'm in my business.
Right.
It's just part of who I am. Yeah.
And so this brings up a question, somewhat of a two-parter. First of all, is it easier for you to do your job when you are more of the outside person looking in than you are the person that is in the mix? Is it easier to be much more objective when you are viewing it through the lens of somebody who is not in the thick of it?
1,000%, 1,000% easier to be the objective third party saying, here's what I see. And that really only works when you're working with a team who's open and willing to change.
Mm,
So it's important to choose your clients wisely. If there are any coaches listening to this too, it's important to choose your clients wisely, because your client, their willingness to
mhm,
embrace change, their willingness to try something new, to get out of the way of their team's growth, to be a leader who creates leaders, which is so important.
mhm,
That is easier to do as the outsider looking in, because it is more objective. As soon as I'm in the organization, then there are more dynamics. There's, thinking about how's a person going to feel. But I also love that.
mhm.
I also love, really getting to know all of the different personalities on a team. So I thrive in both places, which is why I love doing both. And maybe that creates the uncertainty for me, or the
Mm,
variety for me in my life. Maybe that's why I love getting up and going to work in the morning and doing my work,
right,
because I have that variety and it's different, and I have to use my brain differently, and I have to problem solve differently depending on who the audience is.
right,
So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, and I would also, from an objective viewer, outside of what you're saying, is in those situations where you're working in a business with other leaders, and somebody in the leadership is now saying, "Well, we need to do this, we need to do that, you do that," and I think a lot of times people may react and say, well, it's you, not me, that's the issue. So when you're in the team, it's harder for people to then necessarily take what you're saying objectively themselves.
So true. And I think that's where the coaching skills really come in handy, because it's all about asking powerful questions. So
Hmm.
even when you're in a team and you're wanting to share objectively about what it is that you're seeing, right? Whether it's you, not me, or whatever the thing is, right? The most powerful way to get through to somebody is to ask them powerful questions,
Mm,
is to find out what it is that they're really needing. Which of these core basic human needs are they needing to fulfill
mhm,
in the situation? Having that perspective shift, right? So what questions do we need to understand and get on the same page with, so that I understand you, you understand me? Are we having a constructive conversation about this? Maybe it's both of us, right?
yeah.
So that's a more powerful way of looking at it, is we both have things that we're needing. What I need to understand you, you need to understand me. Let's move to that next step together.
Yes, and that also comes back what we were talking about earlier about being self-aware enough to uh, to realize these things about yourself, so that when you
Yeah.
are in, say, a leadership role, that you do become aware of when you say these things to other people, that they are viewing you from a completely different perspective than you are viewing yourself,
Yes.
right?
And
Yeah.
that's where a coach really comes in handy.
For sure.
Because then when you're on the outside of it, you have that sounding board, that person that you can bring things to who is objective and who's also confidential, right?
Yeah.
It can be very challenging. I've been in the leadership roles, I know you have too, where you are kind of alone at the top. Who do
Mm,
you really talk to about the things that are challenging for you as a leader? Yes, you're going to bring things to your team. Yes, you're going to have discussions together, but your coach will be the person who you say, I think I didn't handle this the best way that I could have.
mhm,
And your coach will ask you the questions to help you figure out what was really going on for you, what might be going on for your team that maybe you're not seeing, and how can you reconcile that? How can you resolve that so that you can move together and hit that next target together that you're aiming to create, without creating weirdness or
mhm.
strangeness or,
Tension.
tension, toxicity, that toxic culture that's so common right now. So
Mhm.
we need more leaders who are self-reflective and who are open to looking at themselves. It's very difficult to look at yourself without an objective third party
Yes.
helping you out.
Definitely. Well, and that and what you're saying can also be used in your personal life too, especially in your relationships, having, that objectiveness, or in fact, going, say, to a third party if you get to a point that you need, whether it's couples therapy, whereas individual therapy, what have you. But you bring up, I think, a very good point that again has been a theme throughout my discussions is this idea of mentorship.
Mm.
And I think in the modern era, because of the way we live our lives, that a lot of us no longer have that person that we can look up to, that we can speak to about this, because whether we're in a work at home environment or, we don't have the community where we have that, say that wise or sage person that we can go to, that we're often floundering in our own thought process and not seeking or having that person as a sounding board.
1,000%. Yeah. Yeah. It's so, I mean, really, how many people live that way? I
Mm,
would say most. I don't
mhm,
have this statistic on it, but especially with people working remotely, you get up, your commute's down the hall, super easy, right? So you're not caught in traffic. There's some benefits to this,
mhm,
but then who are you really bouncing ideas off of? Who's giving you feedback
mhm,
on your work performance or on your personal performance? How are you showing up in your day to day life? Who do you talk to when you're not sure how to handle a situation and it's maybe too sensitive to bring up with another colleague or a family member, or maybe somebody in your life doesn't have that experience? They do their best to listen,
mhm,
right? They do their very best, and that's wonderful, but it doesn't help us, core need number 5, grow,
mhm.
right, in the ways that we could if we had that sounding board, like you're saying.
Yeah,
Sometimes one of my mentors says, uh, between you and me and the lamppost, right?
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes the coach is the lamppost.
Mm,
Sometimes that that just being there makes a difference for the person. Sometimes the coach is really in there and digging into what a person might need to take a look at, really look more closely at how they're behaving and how they're thinking, and challenge the behaviors and the habits that a person has, and ask them, what the results are. How
mhm.
is that playing out for you in your
Yeah. And to take that metaphor a little bit further, if you're the lamppost, perhaps you can shed a little light on a situation.
life?
God. Ah,
Yeah, exactly. No, that was good. No, that's absolutely true,
trademark,
right?
trademark, anyone who's listening.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we first started this question, I said it was a two-parter about this idea of being the coach and providing advice. But how are you taking your own advice? Are you your worst client?
No, I'm not my worst client. I have so many coaches in my life who help me. I'm part of accountability groups. I've been a part of masterminds. I think those are also really wonderful. I tend to lead groups more now, but I do have regular check ins with people who can help me see myself objectively. And I've used both coaches and counselors. It's a different perspective, and consultants. So a coach and a consultant are even different,
Mm,
because a consultant will give more advice. Same with a mentor, right? Really provide that, here's what you do in this situation. Where a coach is going to get more curious about you and your process and how you show up in your life, and ask the questions that are going to help
mhm,
you to dismantle the mess that might be in front of you, so that you create a clear path forward.
mm,
So they're all a little bit different. And I rely on all three because
mhm,
I want to keep growing and I want to keep contributing. And the more that I learn about my own journey, the more I can give back to my clients and my peers.
mhm.
Um, it's a long game for me. It's a lifelong journey.
Yes, I think that is how everyone needs to approach this game, this um, process that we call life.
Yeah, it is a game. If we
Mm,
can look at life as this most incredible game that we
mhm.
get to play every day. Not everybody is so lucky.
Yeah.
When you lose somebody, and we've all lost somebody, we're faced with that for a moment in time, right? We're faced with the fragility of our life for a moment in time, and we might make these micro changes because we realize, oh, life's really short, and I really want to do this, that, or the other thing. And then we get into our routines again and we forget the importance and the significance of that realization. But if we can stay with that realization of how precious life is and
Mhm.
that we get to play the game every day, it's a privilege to get to play this game every day. And we get to make our choices every day. And we get to mix things up if we need to.
Mhm.
Getting back to humdrum we get to choose how we want to show up. I'm not saying that there aren't times in life when it's just too hard to choose, because that's a real thing too. There are moments where illness or mental health or
Mhm.
real life challenges get in the way. Let's not pretend that those aren't there and think we can think our way through everything, because that's not true either.
Right.
But when we have our resources about us, when we have our ability to choose, when we're in that situation, then it's a privilege to have a choice. What can you bring in, like the music 1 hour a week? What can you bring in to shake things up a little? Have you ever watched Bee Movie?
Yes.
You know
With
when
Barry.
Barry the bee, he's going
Mhm.
through his closet and he's like, yellow and black, yellow and black, yellow and black, yellow and black. Oh, black and yellow. Let's shake it up a little. It's the
Yeah.
same shirt. It was the
It's
same sweater.
perception. It's perception.
That's right. So how can we shake it up a little if
Mhm.
we need to,
Yeah.
so that we create that uncertainty, certainty? We feel like what we're doing is important and it matters. We're connected to other people. We continue to grow in our lives. And then we give back the things that we've learned along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, just we spoke about gamifying life, as it were. I think it's important to think that in the game of life, we each have our own personal game that we are trying to win. It's not a competitive thing. People take this idea that, well, I measure myself based on my success compared to others. But it's really in the end, when it comes down to, you're lying on your deathbed, you're reflecting on your life, it's you and those that you've interacted with. And I think, it's a game we can all win. And the more we help other people, as you were speaking, if you find yourself, you see others in times of need. If you can help them, that helps you win your game.
Oh, I love that so much. You just summed it right up.
Mm.
It's not about competing with other people.
Mhm.
Really, at the end of the day, you're right. How do we want to remember our life? How do we want other people to remember us when it's our turn to go? How did we play the game? How did
Mhm.
we show up? What lives did we impact? Who's who impacted us?
Mhm.
Reflect on them, right? If
Yes.
you took just a moment right now, Graham, to think about the people in your life who have made the most impact in your life,
Mhm.
right? We all have those people in our life.
And we all
And,
need those people in our
and
lives.
we all need those people in our life. And we are those people in other people's lives,
Mm.
sometimes without knowing it.
We forget that. You know what? That's an amazing point. We forget that about our influence, other people. And it can be in a day to day because you bring a smile. We were talking earlier about being in the elevator. You bring a smile to somebody's face. Who knows? That could change their whole day.
Yeah, it really could. So, how do you want to create that ripple effect of positivity in the world? And that doesn't mean, what do they call it? Um, there's a term where you're kind of faking the positivity and it doesn't do anybody any good, right? Where it's like, oh, they call it spiritual bypass. That's what they
Oh,
call it.
okay.
Where you're really unhappy on the inside, but you're pretending to be happy.
Mm.
That's not good for anybody. That's not good for you, right? So how do we get to that place within ourselves where we find the contentment
Mhm.
within ourselves? And it's usually in the simple things. It's usually in the people, the connections that we have, the differences that we're making, and recognizing the differences others are making and the gratitude we feel for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. I would love to go on. You have been so insightful. There may have to be an Annette Sharpe part 2 episode down the road on humdrumity.
My pleasure.
but I would like to give you your day back. But before I let you go, I have two more questions that I ask all of my guests.
Okay.
The first one is, if you could speak to young Annette Michelle Dykes,
Mhm.
what would be the piece of advice you would give her that would help progress her along moving forward in life?
Don't take it so seriously.
Were you a serious child?
I took myself very
Mm,
seriously.
right,
Yeah. I really put a lot of pressure on myself.
right.
I really bought into the systems that we live in
Mm,
the sense of who I needed to be, how I needed to look, what I needed to do to be good, to be exceptional, to be, you know, um, successful, right?
hmm
So I bought into all of that and I put every pressure on myself to continue to grow, which
hmm
was good, but it became uh, it was too I was too hard on myself.
right. You were
So
playing the wrong game. You were playing the
yeah,
wrong
so it
game.
wasn't playing a playful game.
Mm,
I wasn't playing a curiosity game. I wasn't playing a um, the subtle game of life. Like
hmm
now, when I walk past, we have this beautiful tree in our yard with beautiful flowers, a hibiscus tree, and in the summer it's full of bumblebees. And when I walk by it, I watch the bumblebees and I
mm,
watch them getting their pollen, and
hmm
I'm I'm amazed by it. I wouldn't have done my younger self was too busy trying to be and trying to get ahead. I took myself too seriously.
Right. Do you ever guess which ones are wearing the yellow
Oh,
and
sure.
black as
I
opposed to the
do.
black and yellow
I
jacket
do
that
now.
day? Okay. So, last question. I like to take the question I just asked you and reverse it. So, if young Annette Dykes could see older Annette Sharpe, what would her take be on that woman she has become? And what would be something that she could say to that other person?
Should be very proud of me
Mm,
for
that's good.
breaking out of the need to be something
Mm,
for this because I thought I had to be something. Should be very proud of the places that I visited, of the
mhm,
cultures that I've integrated into, of the things that I've chosen to learn and the risks that I took. Should be really proud of that. And she would
mhm.
say, um, yeah, she would say, I'm so proud of you. Yeah,
That's good. And I
yeah.
think that is a wonderful takeaway for everybody. That feeling that your younger self could see you and feel happiness and warmth about who you are now. Well, I'd like to thank you, Annette, for joining us today on Humdrummedy,
Thank
and
you.
I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me, Graham. Super fun.
Okay, bye bye. A promise is a promise. Please check out Annette's website by going to growingforsuccess.com or find the link in this episode's description. Hey, let's always try and keep our word. Okay, school's out. Go and enjoy recess.